shadows of a twisted town where demons play and souls are bound. Blackheart whispers, follow me. We refuse, won't be the same.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Unspoken Issues podcast. If you look outside, maybe some leaves are turning and falling onto the ground, as a matter of fact, and somebody's got their jack-o'-lantern or their 12-foot skeleton sitting out in their yard. It's about Halloween time. Chris Armstrong and myself are going to take you on a trip into some scary, I don't know if they're scary. They're pretty scary. I mean, we're dealing with demons here. I mean, that's pretty scary. You know, we're heading into some Marvel comics. We're going to be talking Ghost Rider, Wolverine, Punisher, and these three guys getting together on a couple of adventures. One that happened in 91 and the other one in 94. But yeah, so Chris, you threw this out here. We're going to start with Hearts of Darkness, which is Ghost Rider, Wolverine, Punisher, Hearts of Darkness. And then we're going to finish things out with The Dark Design. Did you have a chance to read Hearts of Darkness? Or I guess either one of these books. Give me your backstory on these and why you picked them.
I picked them because it's Halloween time, so you know that's Ghost Rider time on the Unspoken Issues podcast. When we do Spirits of Venom last year.
Yeah, I believe that.
We did the Rise of the Midnight Suns a couple of years ago. I like there was another one in between those two, but either way, we've done a lot of Ghost Rider in October, and so we're doing that again. I feel like Hearts of Darkness is kind of like a minor classic. It's not the Infinity Gauntlet or one of the big Marvel things, but at the time it came out, Ghost Rider, Wolverine, and Punisher were the three biggest characters outside of the mutants for Marvel. It made sense to throw them together for a tale. And then they came back with Dark Design a few years later. Don't think it's as highly regarded, possibly because Hearts of Darkness has John Romita Jr., who is divisive, but mostly the fan favorite. Some people don't like his art at all, think it's really ugly. I kind of felt that way when I was younger. I've come to appreciate it more now. But with Dark Design, it's Ron Garney, who is, I think, great, but is not the same status as Romita Jr., so maybe that's why it's not as highly regarded. But yeah, I think a lot of people like Hearts of Darkness, at least.
Did you read these off the shelf, or how'd you get a hold of this?
No, I'm pretty sure I had that gap where I was out of comics in the mid-'90s for about a year and a half. When I got back into it, I remember ordering a lot of stuff through catalogs, or not through catalogs necessarily, but they had those pages in
what's that?
Is it America's Best?
Yeah, you could get, like, every once in a while, I can't remember the names of the companies, but you know,
they
you got
basically have catalog pages, and you can order comics through those. So I ended up ordering I got some of the Age of Apocalypse trades that way.
Nice.
I think I got these two, a lot of the prestige format Marvel and DC books around that time through ordering them that way, like Venom the Vault and these two and probably some others. That's when I got a hold of these finally in the late 90s, so not when they were released.
Just curious, because I'm curious. When you're ordering from those companies, when they're sending those things to you by mail, how's the packaging? Like, is it decent, or do you remember it all? I would hate to go to. I've heard horror stories of going to your mailbox and seeing the comic folded up and like that. But
I don't really remember the packaging from back then, but I would usually have pretty big orders, so I imagine they were probably packed into a bigger box rather than just a couple of issues in an envelope. I remember at one time Marvel had some kind of promotion where they were giving away a 3-issue subscription to your choice of these 4 or 5 different titles. I got a handful of issues of X-Force, in the early 90s, and they came through a mailbox, and they were just like basically, they're packaged by Marvel, and you could do subscriptions directly through the publishers. And they were just like a bagged and boarded comic shoved into a mailbox.
Oh boy!
So they weren't. The mailman didn't care. He just
he doesn't.
But yeah, with the stuff that I ordered through those retailers, and then like if I order stuff like through mycomicshop.com now, I'm usually have big enough orders that they're in bigger, heftier boxes where I don't have to worry about it.
Right. It's interesting. I bring that question up. I didn't know the Dark Design existed. I don't really have a history with the Dark Design, but as far as Hearts of Darkness goes, Hearts of Darkness is one of the first comics I ever ordered off eBay. I remember it clearly. It was between 2003 and 2004, because I was living in Bluefield, and I only lived in Bluefield, West Virginia for like 9 months. And strangely enough, our companion here, Evan Bevins, who lived in Bluefield, West Virginia, and moved up here before I moved down there for 9 months. And we had no idea. Our paths never crossed, but we resided in the same spot. But I remember getting on eBay, and I'm like, I am going to try and order some comics and just see. The trades were going really cheap. Key issues are up there in value, but as far as trades go, you could find them dirt cheap, and the shipping sometimes was not bad. Shipping is stupid now, but back then you could find shipping that was very reasonable. So I think I ordered this, and then it was Fear, which is the Captain America Ghost Rider one. I want to say possibly. And then I feel like
I got through the catalog. That catalog
was it? I feel like there might have been something else that I got, but I was not upset with the packaging or anything. The books came in and they were great. I remember reading it. I remember not understanding it for some reason. Now I'm glad I'm revisiting it. It's only been 21 years, and I was definitely old enough to probably put some brain power and understand it back then. But I didn't know who Blackheart was.
Yeah.
I had no clue. I didn't know who he was. And to be honest, I think the first exposure that I ever had to Blackheart was the Marvel Superheroes arcade game. And even then, I don't know if you remember, it's the fighting game that Berserker Barrage.
Yeah, I don't think I ever played it, but I know what game you're talking about.
All right. I mean, it's basically the Infinity Gauntlet in a fighting game, because at the end of it, you're trying to get the Infinity Stones. And if you get an Infinity Stone, it gives you a different type of attack, which is actually pretty cool. So I think it's one of the first Marvel fighting games that I can remember actually being out there before it became Marvel versus Capcom. Blackheart was in that game as a playable character. Like, of all the villains that you could pick from, Blackheart was in there, and Shuma Gorath was in there too. And I don't know if you know who Shuma Gorath is, but is
that the Strange villain?
I think Shuma Gorath had a very quick appearance in that new Doctor Strange.
Madness.
Yeah, I
remember people talking about that, and they call him something else because maybe that's a character that has there's some kind of like legal rights, like maybe Lovecraft character or something. If it was Lovecraft, it would probably be public domain, but it seemed like they couldn't call him that. But that's clearly who it was supposed to be in Multiverse of Madness.
Shuma Gorath is in the game. There's my background on Hearts of Darkness.
Blackheart I only knew from the Series 3 trading cards. That's where I was introduced to him, and I don't think I'd ever read any books with him in it until I read Hearts of Darkness finally, probably in like 96 or something like that.
Was he not showing up in Ghost Rider at all? I feel like he would definitely be a Ghost Rider villain.
I don't remember him being in it. Before we get into the actual comic, this trade that I've got that has these two books collected also has an interview with Romita Jr. in the back from Marvel Age number 108, which he did right before this book came out. They talk about Hearts of Darkness a little bit and how he designed Blackheart in his Daredevil run. I think he says in there, an editor, after they'd already created him, was like, let's just make him Mephisto's son. And
came way after, huh?
Right. I don't know, because I've never read that run that he appeared in Daredevil. I thought that was kind of interesting. I didn't know that Romita Jr. designed Blackheart, and I don't think I even knew Mephisto was a villain in a Daredevil run at some point. But he also mentions how the Mephisto that appears in Hearts of Darkness, the giant with the beak and everything.
Yeah.
He designed that version of Mephisto, and up to this point, he was the only one who'd ever drawn Mephisto that way.
So, to talk about JR real quick, I've got a little bit of history of these guys. I wrote down a sentence for each one of these guys and kind of where they were at in the 90s. Mm-hmm. So we got written by Hearts of Darkness, December of 91 is when it dropped. What would you call this, prestige format?
That's what I used to call them, the 48-page one-shots. I think Rob Liefeld calls them perfect bound.
I heard him use that term, right?
Yeah, but They're not stapled. They're glued on the border.
Right. Well, so Howard Mackie writing, John Romita Jr. is penciling, inking is Klaus Janson, coloring is by John Wellington, and letters by Joe Rosen. Howard Mackie started writing Ghost Rider with issue number 1 in 1990, and also starts writing some Wolverine stories in Marvel Comics Presents in 1990 as well. So he's got experience with both Wolverine and Ghost Rider. I didn't see much about Punisher under his belt, but then we have John Romita Jr. He's the penciler for Daredevil. You mentioned Daredevil from issue 250 in 1987. And as he continues on, he switches over to Iron Man in 1990. But he does this one shot in December of 90. And then in January of 91, can you guess what he's penciling at that point?
It's the Daredevil, The Man Without Fear miniseries.
I've got it, at least according to Mike's Amazing World of Comics, it's the other character in this book. He goes to Punisher Warzone.
Oh, okay.
So January
He misses that.
January of 91.
Do you know about The Man Without Fear, the Daredevil miniseries that he does with Frank Miller?
Yes, we covered that on one of the source materials a long time ago.
Okay.
But go ahead.
He references that as a graphic novel he's working on with Frank Miller. So I don't know if originally that was planned to be a graphic novel. They would do those occasionally. They don't do them often even now, but they did some in the 80s and 90s. I wonder if they just decided to split it up into a miniseries or if that was just him misspeaking or something. I don't know. He references that as a graphic novel he's working on, but it would turn into the Man Without Fear miniseries. But
I'm really curious now as to when that actually drops. I got to get an answer real quick or it'll bug me. Man Without Fear. Daredevil Man Without Fear. Wow. That comes out in October of 93.
okay.
So he's working on that in the works
91.
all the way back in 91.
Unless there was a graphic novel that came out and I just haven't heard about it or don't know what it is.
I mean,
because he doesn't mention it by name, but he does mention Frank Miller Daredevil book, so I just assumed that was what it was.
That's got to be what it is, because there isn't anything
Nothing else listed
here. Not here as far as I could tell. Let me do one more thing. I'll click on his name. I just typed in The Man Without Fear to see when that came out, but let's click on John Romita Jr. This interview happens in 91. He does Punisher Warzone, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, Cable, Blood, and Metal, X-Men 300 to 304, and then Daredevil, The Man Without Fear, #1 comes out in August of the shelf date is August of 93. So yeah, that was in the works. That's pretty crazy. I mean, that had to have either been just like, hey, we're talking about it and it might happen, or it's one of those where like, oh yeah, we've had these irons in the fire for that long and we're going to release it. And maybe they had to wait to just the right time too. What's going on in Daredevil's mythos? 'Cause he's always got something crazy going on. You got to set up. Well, it's going to take us a year to get there. Anyway, that's interesting. And Klaus Janson, I think he's been doing Daredevil for a while. He's been inking since 1973. He was around this time. He's doing inks for Legends of the Dark Knight in 1990. So that happens just before he comes back to Marvel and does Hearts of Darkness. Did you have anything else you wanted to share from that interview before I jump into the synopsis?
Not that I can recall.
All right, hop in here with anything that I forgot, added, or got wrong. In the quiet town of Christ's Crown, 3 iconic anti-heroes, Wolverine, Ghost Rider, and the Punisher, are drawn together by mysterious messages, each lured by the promise of confronting their pasts and the potential to vanquish a greater evil. At the center of the chaos is Lucy, an innocent young girl whose mother falls under Blackheart's dark influence. Blackheart is the son of Mephisto, and he emerges from the shadows seeking to corrupt the entire town and manipulate its residents into serving him. The trio must join forces not only to face their own inner demons, but also to protect Lucy and her mom from being consumed by evil. As Blackheart's malevolent presence grows, he offers each hero a tempting deal, given to their darker impulses in exchange for unimaginable power. Despite the torment of their inner conflicts, Wolverine, Ghost Rider, and the Punisher refuse Blackheart's offers, knowing the fate of Lucy and her mother hangs in the balance. The child, a symbol of purity and hope, becomes the key to resisting the corruption that threatens to engulf the town. Tensions arise as Blackheart unleashes his powers, using Lucy's mother as a pawn to break the hero's spirits, and Lucy herself, if I remember correctly. In a climactic showdown, the 3 anti-heroes battle waves of demonic creatures. Their mission becomes more than a fight for their own souls. That's a battle for Lucy's future and the soul of the town. As Blackheart taunts them, offering power in exchange for their submission, the trio stands firm, embodying the very resistance that Blackheart wishes to crush. In the end, their combined strength overcomes Blackheart's manipulation, and Lucy is saved, a beacon of innocence in the aftermath of darkness. Though the fight leaves scars on their bodies and souls, the heroes walk away knowing their refusal to cross the moral line, despite the overwhelming temptation, has not only saved Lucy, but preserved their sense of justice. Nice. So that seems like a really big flowery way of kind of putting what I read there. And you were right earlier. There's not much here.
Yeah.
As far as the plot goes, it's like these 3 guys have to be in the same spot. Danny's Ghost Rider at this point. Wolverine and Brown and Yellow Wolverine, by the way. Oh, yeah. And then Punisher, Frank Castle are in this town, and they realize Blackheart's decided he's going to try and tempt them all. So at that point, they've got to resist his temptations because and it's not mentioned here. I think the whole point of this is so he can try to overthrow his father, Mephisto, and become king of hell, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I don't
know if that's plot lines that are being picked up from Daredevil when he first showed up or what, really. Because, again, I haven't read that stuff, but he definitely does not like his dad.
I don't have any idea who Blackheart is when I'm first reading this. When I read it recently, I'm still kind of iffy on Blackheart. I knew him a little bit more than what I did 20 years ago. But
yeah,
the only motivation you need to know about Blackheart is he wants to rule hell and kill his father. As to what his goal was here, I just didn't understand what he was trying to do with these three guys. I didn't understand. I knew he was trying to give them some type of power. My understanding is, or at least from when I was reading other reviews, is that he would bring them in and they would fight alongside Blackheart to overthrow Mephisto.
He's not very nice about it. He's being a real jerk about showing them their tortured past. But yeah, he does seem to just want to recruit them to go after Mephisto. And obviously he needs their help because he can't even beat them, much less Mephisto when it comes down to it. Actually, there was one other thing I wanted to mention about that interview that I forgot about. He does say that Mackie, who is the writer at this time, he pitched it to Romita as a Ghost Rider book that kind of just guest starred Wolverine and Punisher. And I would argue that's still what this is, because it's definitely way more focused on Ghost Rider. I think they probably just wanted to make sure Wolverine and Punisher's names were in big letters on the cover so they could make sure everybody knew that it was a team up between these three.
You got a great point, because back in the 90s, what were you doing? You were throwing Ghost Rider, or these three guys guest starring everywhere.
Exactly.
And then if you just said Ghost Rider on this book and, guest starring these two, but no, now you got an actual book that's just has their three names on the cover. As a matter of fact, I mean, they're the biggest names on the cover. Like, the title is not as big as what those three guys' names are. So, yeah, good point.
And he wasn't clear, I don't think, about was it going to be like an arc in Ghost Rider, if it was always going to be a one shot, who knows, but it was going to just be a Ghost Rider story with them guest starring. And that's still kind of how it played. The second part, the dark design, not as much, but definitely with this one.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what you're saying there. My third note here was Ghost Rider feels like he's the main character for some reason. Yeah. He's the driving force behind all this. And there's some great looking, I think, couple page splashes here that Ghost Rider gets to star in. So, yeah.
What do you think about Romita Jr.? I don't know if we've ever... I know we've covered stuff that he's done before.
So
I don't know your take on Romita Jr. as
old Blockface McGee. No, I don't hate his art. I think that you talked about the Man Without Fear. When we read that, I didn't have any criticism. I remember appreciating everything that he put into it. I hear the same things that you do about his women are pretty ugly. He can't. It's kind of hard for him to draw somebody that's pretty. I can remember his
appealing.
Yeah, that's probably a better word. His rendition of Elektra. But again, that isn't something that takes me out of a book. Now, I'll tell you, if this was was it Keith Giffen who did Trencher? That's art that will drive me away from a book.
The interesting thing about Trencher is that was a new style he was trying out. That's not what his art always looked like.
I hope he decided not to do that anymore.
But I like Romita. I do feel like this is the era. I don't think I really liked his art as much back then. He was doing Uncanny X-Men after this. Something about it looked kind of ugly, not in a way that's like terrible. Like there's some really cool images in this. I thought I feel like he hit his peak in the late 90s, early 2000s, like with Thor, and he had an Incredible Hulk run.
Was he the artist on the Eternals?
I believe so. The one that Gaiman did.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I think he did that.
I've never had any problem with his art, to be honest. Yeah. It stands out. It's a unique style. It's nothing that takes me out. So I don't think the Punisher, as far as characters go, let's see how many characters that have taken me by surprise by a mustache. Savage Dragon did at one point in Wildstar. He was sporting one in Wildstar. And now Frank Castle's sporting one in this one. Pencil thin, too. Like, I'm sitting there going, you look like a villain, dude. So as far as what were my other notes here? Ghost Rider getting an older motorcycle in this was kind of neat. Blackheart, I think, ends up stealing a newer motorcycle. I noticed it looked different for sure. But
yeah, he's got Danny's, Ghost Rider's motorcycle with a medallion and everything. And I don't think this is something he had ever done before, where he can just basically get any old motorcycle and turn it into a Hell Rider or whatever.
Yeah, you'd know better than I would, because he just grabs another one and I was like, oh, okay, well, this is interesting. He just grab a bike and go. I do love seeing Wolverine and Frank in the same comic. This is 91. I'd have to look at it to see when it occurred. It was probably 89 when they first met in the pages of War Journal. So they've definitely they both recognized each other immediately. I mean, you could tell Wolverine knows who, he could see right through that pencil thin mustache. He knows who Frank is, and Frank knows who he is, but nobody knows who Danny is, which is kind of cool because they just see him as a kid.
He says something about he's got there's something familiar about him.
Yeah.
But he doesn't know he's Ghost Rider. Definitely.
Right. As far as the plot goes, I already talked about some of the complaints I have with Blackheart, but I mean, look, we're here. I guess the central point is to just be like, well, there's a dark force, an evil, malevolent force out there. These guys are anti-heroes. Can they be brought across that line? It doesn't take much for these guys to kill or do something evil, but there's always that sense of justice, and what they believe they are doing is right. Who they are trying to kill or stop is usually a villain. So trying to get one of these guys to go over the edge. Honestly, the one that I would think that would, if anybody was going to join Blackheart, I would say it would be Ghost Rider.
Same circles.
Right, exactly. But that's kind of all of my notes for Hearts of Darkness until I remember something else. What do you got?
Yeah, I got a few things. The cover is, maybe this is just me. I don't know if I'm even accurate on the fact that this is kind of a mini classic, but that cover has always stuck with me. If you open up the back, it's a gatefold cover where the back is also part of the image. You see Mephisto in the background with his mouth open and all these hordes of demons just spilling out of his mouth. It's kind of perfect for a Ghost Rider story. It looks more like Mephisto and Blackheart are together, like teaming up. But
Gotcha.
The opening page, we get a nice satanic cult human sacrifice.
You're a big fan of the cults.
Perfect way to kick off Halloween. And that's how Blackheart makes it to Christ's Crown. They're in, I don't think, but maybe Colorado. And there's one panel that really shows off that Romita Jr. is giving us a tiny Wolverine when he's standing next to Frank, and he's clearly the 5'1" version of.
That's your Deadpool cameo Wolverine right there.
Which, I mean, just in the movies, it's fine. Hugh Jackman is great. He's an awesome Wolverine. But I'm always disappointed when artists don't make it a point to keep in mind that Wolverine's supposed to be small. That's part of what his initial appeal was, I think. A lot of artists don't seem to care. The layout of Blackheart's sales pitch is pretty cool when he's trying to convince the three of them. You see the panels there's a bigger image on each side of the 2-page spread, and then the interiors on the inside, it's the images of the three guys reacting. We already mentioned Mackie is really using this to propel Danny's Ghost Rider story. There's mention of the Soul Crystal, which comes more into play later in Ghost Rider's mythology and stuff. That little girl is going to have major PTSD. I mean, she goes to hell.
Oh man, it's so true. And when we get into the dark design, I mean, she comes back, which is great. I love the fact that she comes back, but my gosh, she's already seen hell, so let's get into
I always like seeing giant long stringy nipple Mephisto with a
dude beat. I might as well cross that note off now, because we have to be not even Okay, so is this a common thing? Like you said, stringy nipple. Like I'm sitting there, I'm looking at that, and I'm like, wow, the nips on that guy. Does continuity stay in play when we get into the Dark Design? Because them nips just get longer, I swear.
See, I don't know. Like in that interview, Romita Jr. talks about how he designed this version of Mephisto, and he was the only one that ever utilized it, because normally Mephisto looks more like a standard devil type character.
Used to him from the Infinity Gauntlet. That's
Right.
the one that I'm thinking of.
But this, you kind of get an idea that he's more of a cosmic entity, that he can appear in different forms, and this is one of his more intimidating versions, I guess. And I like how he just like scoops up Blackheart and eats him at the
He
end.
just eats it right up. Nom, 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 nom.
Yeah, but that's pretty much all I got for the first issue. I like this one. If nothing else, to me, it's a classic. It's always good to see these three anti-heroes with the Ghost Rider, and you get Romita Jr., who was a big deal then and now, really. It's just kind of just a cool book. I like it.
Yeah, like I said, I think as far as when I was looking for stuff to get off of eBay, it was the three names. It was Ghost Rider, Wolverine, and Punisher in a book that I could get for really cheap. I don't know if it gets acclaim, but it's not bad. It's a good book. It's a pretty standard plot. I love the fact that Wolverine says it twice, like in this book and in the next, like, hey, why don't you get like Silver Surfer or Thor to help you here? Overthrowing Mephisto is out of our league.
Yeah.
And he's right, because you wouldn't expect Wolverine and Punisher, Ghost Rider probably, but the other two, you wouldn't expect them to be going up against demons. Howard Mackie is a good writer because he can tell a story like this. Granted, it's simple, but you get these guys in here. Nothing big happens in this book other than the fact that they fight Blackheart, and I don't know if you believe that they kill him. I mean, it's not them that kills them. It's essentially Mephisto picks them up and eats them, you know. But in the next book, something big happens. That's for sure by the end of the Dark Design. But in this one, I just feel like they were like, we got to take these three guys and we've got to tell a good story. And as far as Lucy goes, I didn't look, but maybe you did. Is she like a recurring character in Ghost Rider in any way?
I don't think so. I do have a gap in my Ghost Rider knowledge. Basically, that's a series I never really got back into once I got back into comics.
Well, I'm going to fandom real quick, and I will click on Lucy Crumb. This is her first appearance. All right. Flo's her mom. Lucy was Flo Crumb's daughter. When Flo was entranced by Blackheart, she asked Wolverine, Punisher, and Ghost Rider to save her. And as far as appearances, 2 appearances of Lucy Crumb, I guess we're going to be talking about both of those tonight.
It's a Lucy Crumb show.
All right, it's panel time. Let's pick a panel.
I'm going to let you go first because I actually forgot to pick a panel.
He's got to look. Because it took me a little bit to figure this one out. There are some great 2-page spreads, fantastic action shots to pick from. I went with one that was a little bit near and dear to my heart. We're going to be talking about Frank Castle. However, the one that I wanted to pick ended up being the way that they laid this out, which was fantastic. Every guy gets to kind of like say something to Blackheart and tell him to shove it, which is nice. At the end, when everybody is trying to gang up and beat up and kill Blackheart, send him back to hell, whatever you want to say, I was wondering like, who's going to get the final shot in.
Yeah.
And it turns out it's the Punisher. And the ones I wasn't going to stretch the rules because I want to go with one panel. But that whole page really is my favorite, where it's got
blowing him away.
He's dual wielding. He's got one gun on the left, one gun and a grenade launcher, and he's just unloading on Blackheart. The one that I picked was right after that, when Blackheart essentially explodes. A lot of that is because of Frank's words. I'll start with the page here. To Blackheart, you think you can stop me with your pitiful weapons, your claws, your guns. And Frank's like, we'll give it a try and keep trying until phonies like you shut up. You could take your edge and shove it. It doesn't exist. No gray area. And then this is the panel that I picked. If I ever had a soul, it's long gone. There is just right, wrong, and punishment. I mean, if there is no Suno song that begs to be made other than right, wrong, and punishment, it's that one right there. So that's my panel.
Well, this one's begging for a heavy metal.
Oh, is it, man? Is it ever? Yes, it is. Maybe some like, I don't know. I'm certain that I could put the word satanic element into the prompt. we get something. Anyway, the panel is really not that great. I mean, it's just Blackheart exploding into pieces.
Right.
But it's the words that count. So there you go. That's my panel. Did you find something?
Yeah, he talks about the edge. You take your edge and shove it. One more thing from that interview. Originally, it was going to be called The Edge. That's what Mackie pitched it to Romita Jr. as the title, and obviously it changed before.
Oh, interesting. What's that line of comics called?
Yeah, there's a line called Marvel Edge in like the mid 90s. And Punisher was part of it, probably Ghost Rider.
Yeah.
I think maybe a Nick Fury book might have been part of it.
I feel like it's pre-Max. It's definitely pre-Marvel Max. I don't know if that's what they were pushing there or not. I'd probably have to look that up, but maybe this is the seeds of that coming together here. But anyway, go ahead. It's the last panel on the page where it starts out with Wolverine and Punisher trying to make their way through this thicket of thorns, and then they're really having trouble getting through, getting cut to pieces, and then here comes Ghost Rider vrooming through on his new hell bike, screaming at Blackheart, clearing the path for him. That's my panel. Yeah, that's a good one, dude. Just looking at Frank's face, the panel before that, he has cut all the pieces, and I don't know. Did they know Ghost Rider was here? I feel like they may have, because he may have showed up. But no, I think that might be when they first are aware of him, right? Yeah, no? Danny hasn't transformed up until that point. That's sick. He just comes blazing through there. I love it. All right, you ready to get into the dark design? Let's do it. December 6th, 1994, according to Marvel Fandom and their release dates. December 10th, 91 is when it originally released Hearts of Darkness. So then we're getting into December 6th, 1994. Our writer stays the same. That's Howard Mackie, penciled by Ron Garney, inked by Al Milgrom, colored by Paul Mounts, and lettered by Richard Starkings. A little bit of background here. We already talked about Mackie, but in the 3 years since Hearts of Darkness, Mackie stays on Ghost Rider. Okay, so he's continually writing that, and he also writes a lot of other like Ghost Rider related titles, including Spirits of Vengeance. And he also wrote Ghost Rider Cap Fear, which Captain America Ghost Rider book we were talking about. Speaking of that, you mentioned you had bought that one. That I read on 4th of July. I always dig up some Captain America issues to read. Right. And I reread that this past 4th of July. Pretty solid book. Maybe a future Halloween episode. Well, wow. Yeah. I think I remember you posted something about that, if I remember correctly. Ghost Rider, Captain America, Fear. And again, Ghost Rider teaming up with some of the most unlikely. Every time I see like Ghost Rider and Cable, I'm like, what kind of shenanigans are we going to get into? I feel like they were just telling Mackie, like, hey, what ideas you got for Ghost Rider? Just we'll let you do whatever. Right. So Ron Garney, that's a name I've heard, but I didn't recall much until I dug in to see what he had done on Mike's Amazing World of Comics. Now, this guy, he usually picks a title and he sticks with it. So he's not one of these guys that are doing like multiple titles. Every once in a while, when we were talking about the backgrounds of some of these artists, some guys are all over the place. This guy, once he picks a title, he's there for a little bit, and then he goes on to another title and he's there for a little bit. So Garney does Moon Knight for a bit, and then Night Stalkers. Oh yeah. Then he's with Mackie on Ghost Rider, starting with issue number 39 in May of 93 up to June of 1994. So that's where he's at. Ron Garney has some experience with Ghost Rider going into this. Al Milgrom, that is a name a lot of people have heard of because he's been around since 1973. Interesting that both inkers on these books of at least Mike's Amazing World of Comics has them both starting in 1973 with their work. Milgrom, he's doing inks as well as pencils. And in 94, just to kind of give you a snapshot of 94, he's primarily inking X Factor and Thunderstrike. Ooh. Yeah, so we recognize Thunderstrike. Anything about this book before I get into the synopsis here? Go for it. All right. In the shadowy depths of Christ's crown. That's right. Things have turned here, folks. Blackheart may be gone, but something's happened. Christ's crown is, I don't know if the city's evolved or devolved. 3 of Marvel's most fearsome anti-heroes are brought back together again. Wolverine, the Punisher, and Ghost Rider find themselves drawn together by a sinister force. Blackheart, the diabolical offspring of Mephisto, has unleashed his corrupt minions to overrun the town, warping its inhabitants into twisted reflections of their former selves. The heroes, each burdened by their own dark pasts, must face not only Blackheart's monstrous army, but also the creeping dread that threatens to consume them from within. As the trio battles their way through the nightmarish streets, they uncover Blackheart's true intentions. The demon, get this, folks, the demon seeks to overthrow his father and establish himself as the new ruler of hell by corrupting the pure soul of a young girl named Lucy. Her innocence is the key to Blackheart's twisted ascension, and he will stop at nothing to taint it. Despite their hardened exteriors, the heroes are united by a shared sense of duty to protect the child, recognizing that her purity is the last bastion against the encroaching darkness. The battle reaches its fever pitch within the decaying ruins of a once grand cathedral, now a macabre fortress under Blackheart's control. Surrounded by writhing tendrils of demonic energy, Wolverine, the Punisher, and Ghost Rider are pushed to their limits. Blackheart taunts them, exploiting their deepest fears and darkest desires in an attempt to break their spirits. But despite his relentless assaults, the trio's resolve only strengthens. Their combined willpower, forged through years of surviving the worst the world has to offer, becomes an unbreakable shield against Blackheart's influence. In the climactic confrontation, Blackheart's plan begins to unravel. The heroes manage to protect Lucy, her innocence acting as a beacon of light in the suffocating darkness. Desperate, Blackheart attempts to sacrifice her, believing that her blood will secure his dominion. But in a twist of fate, it is Blackheart who falls, betrayed by his own hubris and the very forces he sought to control. The final blow is delivered not by the heroes, but by the power of forgiveness, a force that Blackheart, steeped in malice, could never comprehend. As the dust settles, the town is freed from Blackheart's grasp, but the victory is bittersweet. Wolverine, the Punisher, and Ghost Rider stand silently reflecting on the cost of their triumph. They are heroes, but of a kind that walks the line between light and shadow, forever questioning if the path they tread is the right one. Yet for Lucy, they were enough, and that, for now, must be enough for them too. The story ends with the unsettling realization that though Blackheart is defeated, Blackheart has somehow acquired the blood of an innocent, and I assume it's Lucy's. I don't know. You might have to shed some light. I might have been missing a page. I don't know. But he has the blood of an innocent at the tip of a dagger. And when he is in the presence of his father, Mephisto, he plunges the dagger deep into him, killing Mephisto. And by the end of this issue, Blackheart is the new ruler of hell. So there you go. That is the dark design. Okay. I mean, second verse, same as the first. I mean, I don't know. Let me tell you what I appreciate about this story. First off, when I read it, I didn't look to see who was writing it again until afterwards. And I was like, oh man, they're actually referencing the previous story. Okay, that's great. We got a lot of continuity here. Lucy has actually grown up, which, by the way, it's only been 3 years, but I kind of in my headcanon put this a little more in the future because she definitely looks like she wasn't very old in the first story.
Yeah, she was like maybe 5 or 6, it seemed like, in the first one. And here it looks like she's like a teenager, maybe.
Yeah, so I was thinking maybe they shoved this into the future a little bit, and I'm okay with that. We got some continuity. Lucy is back. It makes a little more sense why Blackheart is targeting her now. He's not just using her to goad the superheroes. I didn't catch that he was trying to do anything with the blood of the innocent in Hearts of Darkness. And this one, for sure, he's trying to get the blood of an innocent and in order to use it. We have the guys having to relive. Actually, it's not just happening in their mind anymore. They're experiencing some of this stuff as it's going on. They get transported into their own private hell. I remember Frank is standing in the middle of a bunch of buildings and all the gangsters that had killed his family are around trying to kill him. Wolverine is taken back into his berserker form. I assume that's one of his fears or worries, that he'll always turn into the beast within. What was Ghost Rider's? I cannot remember.
He's his sister.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
In the graveyard. She died in the first issue of his book.
Right. It's very faithful to Hearts of Darkness, which is great. I like that. We're getting these guys back together. We're getting Blackheart. He's still doing what he's doing. We're back in Christ's crown of all places. I thought things were going to take a weird turn at the beginning where we had these people just show up out of nowhere and it turns out they're the corrupted. I thought it was going to be some kind of team, which they sort of are, but it's more like Blackheart has sent out this corruption to everybody. And it also gets inside Ghost Rider, which is interesting.
They do look like a generic 90s group that would show up, a group of mercenaries that would show up in 1 or 2 issues of a comic and be soundly defeated and then never show up again.
Never show up again. You're right. That's what it reminded me of too. And shortly thereafter, you don't hear much from them again. I don't think. It's not like these guys are major players at all, even in this book. What else was I going to say? I mean, I'm going to jump to it right now. The knife and the blood.
Yeah. See, I think the implication is that is Lucy's blood, but I don't remember her getting cut.
I looked. She doesn't. I looked and I looked.
Yeah.
When she goes and after he's defeated and he's laying, Blackheart's laying on the ground, he's crying. As he's crying, she leans over and I'll read it here. The child, so full of goodness and light, runs toward the fallen devil. Kneeling before him, she offers the last thing he expected, forgiveness. Blackheart weeps as his world becomes undone. Now, in that, there's a 4-panel sequence as you're going down the page. You see her run over, lean down, put her arm on Blackheart's shoulder, and you see Blackheart crying. The next panel is Blackheart laying on the ground while everybody runs away. I wonder if she did not take the knife herself, cut herself, and then give it to him. It's not spelled out. I think it's interesting. That's as to why she did it, I don't know. I think to myself, like, that may not make a whole lot of sense. Beating a demon by forgiveness, I'm completely on board. But if she knew what this plot was, you know what? You would be a better ruler than Mephisto, and cuts herself and gives him the knife and then takes off. There's no other instance in this book where he stabbed somebody else that was supposedly innocent. She's the only pure person around, so it only makes sense that it was her blood in order to kill Mephisto with. Was there anything I'm missing? Do you have any thoughts on that?
My theory is that they just forgot to put it in there. Or you're just supposed to assume. Even when he pulls the dagger out initially, there's no blood on it.
Right.
I don't know.
I don't know either, man. If it's a glaring mistake, the only thing that I could, because Howard Mackey's not going to write something like that. I just don't feel like he would miss something like that. So you're probably right. He probably scripted it and then they didn't think about it. Or maybe there was some reason they decided they could not. I don't know. And by the way, I was mistaken. I thought those were nips. I think that's nipple armor. If you look at that, I think he actually has armor for his nips. Let's consult Gardy. Let's get Gardy on the phone. Let's get Ron Gardy on the phone right now. We need to discuss the interpretation of what we are seeing here at these actual nips.
More detailed a little bit than the version we get from Ramita.
Mephisto nips. That was the funniest thing. As I'm reading these books, I'm like, okay, note number 1 has to be Mephisto nips. There's nothing else I can talk about until we get past that. So there's my 2 cents on kind of what's going on. Go ahead. You got the floor.
I really like Ron Garney. Now, like more current day Garney stuff, like there's a lot of J.R. Jr. in him. Like a lot of his stuff looks a little bit similar to what Romita Jr. style is.
Really?
You can see it a little bit in this, but this is more like the Kuberts of this era.
I could feel that. The
first thing I remember seeing him on was Night Stalkers, like you mentioned, where his style was a little less clean. He really refined it over the few years between that and his Ghost Rider run, which I liked. He's probably most famous for Captain America, which he did with Mark Waid right before and right after Heroes Reborn. He was on it before the Heroes Reborn run, and then when they brought it back, they put Waid and Garney back on it for a while. He's kind of bounced around, but I really like his stuff. His most recent stuff has been Berserker, the Keanu Reeves comic, where it's basically Keanu Reeves murdering people on every page. This book also seems to have an increase in production values. It looks a lot slicker. The coloring has advanced a lot over the few years since the Hearts of Darkness, between that and Dark Design. It looks really slick. I like the art, the coloring, all that stuff. And it is a snapshot of the era of Marvel, because we get Bone Claw Wolverine.
Yes, we do.
In this one, we get Ponytail Frank.
Yes, we do.
And I guess Trenchcoat Blackheart, which coats were pretty lousy around this time. They were kind of everywhere. So they gave one to Blackheart for some reason. Nothing different really about Ghost Rider. He's pretty much the same old Danny Ketch Ghost Rider. It kind of picks up right in the middle. Ghost Rider on the first page is running away with Lucy. He's already in Christ's Crown. Frank and Wolverine arrive quickly after, but it almost feels like this is the last part of a miniseries, and we don't get to see the first couple parts.
Right.
This is the all-action finale. You talked a little bit about Lucy. She's basically got the child bride shtick going, which is creepy and weird.
I was worried a little bit about Blackheart's interaction with her, and it was definitely creepy.
That's really all I got, despite the weird finale with the blood and everything. I don't know how Blackheart as King of Hell works out. I don't know if that was a role he kept in the Marvel Universe for a while until Mephisto got it back. Or I don't know if those threads were picked up on in later Ghost Rider stories or in Doctor Strange or whatever. But it is cool that it sets a new status quo for that part of, it's a pretty big deal for
it
Marvel
really
Universe
is.
to have a new ruler of Hades, going forward. I think I maybe like this one a little more than Hearts of Darkness, just because I like Garney's art more than that era of Romita Jr., and a lot of it probably has to do with how nice it looks with the advanced coloring and everything. And it seems like this one has a little more action. Like there's a lot going on from the very beginning. There's action going on almost every page, whereas Hearts of Darkness, there's actually a little bit of plot at the beginning. Before, you got to know, reading this one, they're kind of taken for granted that people already know about the first part of the story that happened initially.
Dude, okay, so when you look at Hearts of Darkness, this is one perfect example to show you how it feels like it's elevated a little bit more. In the Hearts of Darkness, they are swarmed by a bunch of demonic entities, but all they are like little green glowing guys. That's all you get. There are a few pages in the Dark Design where there's a 2-page spread of people coming after Frank and Wolverine. They are punching these people. It looks like there is detail on these people's faces. They're not just mushy blobs. I 100% agree with you in regards to the production value of this comic versus the other one, because this one definitely looks like the coloring is on point. It's almost like Hearts of Darkness was kind of washed out compared to this, because this is like, I'm just looking at this 2-page spread where I'm describing these people. There's yellows, there's bright whites, and there's everything is popping off the page.
I do wonder, not a colorist or anything, but
I've colored plenty of coloring pages. Thank you.
Part of it is the changeover in the paper,
could be.
These prestige format books in the late 80s, early 90s usually had a higher quality paper than newsprint, but it wasn't like the glossy pages that would come in, by the mid 90s. So I wonder if the coloring wouldn't have looked right on the lesser quality paper. But by the time they got to 93, they had worked out because some of these darker shade, this is a really dark book, Dark Design. It's a lot of shadows and glowing effects. I wonder if it maybe just wouldn't have looked right, and that's why the two books look so different. Maybe, I don't know.
That's a good thought, in my opinion.
Garney gives us a lot of almost like trading card poses. The first time Frank shows up, he's on that rooftop with the gun barrel, smoke billowing out of the moon behind him.
Oh yeah, that Wolverine shot. Oh yeah.
So a lot of cool striking images from him. I'll go ahead and pick a panel, which honestly is definitely not the best panel in here, but I think my favorite might just be the very first panel, which is just Ghost Rider and Lucy's. I think that here's her aunt. They mentioned that Flo's already dead when we pick up her, but it's just Ghost Rider running away, carrying Lucy with her aunt. They're running from these bad guys. I just really like that opening image.
So Norma Jean is this girl, right? And that's her name?
I read this last weekend, so I don't really...
I mean, you talked about, it is her name. I'm on Fandom, but you talked about how you're in the middle of the action. It almost feels okay. Ghost Rider how long has Norma Jean been around? She's been around for 5 issues, right? No, she is not. This is her first appearance. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Apparently, this is going to be her only appearance. Ghost Rider's she could kill without disregard. And I mean, yeah, she can. She's a badass in this book. She's just shooting these people left and right. And I was like, wow, he must know her. I thought she was going to be a character that just continues on. Nope, not the case. All right, my panel real quick. I enjoy a good panel break. And in 94, Garney is doing some great work here. The one that I chose was there's a trio panel where it's Punisher, Ghost Rider, and Wolverine, and it's towards the end of the book. All three of them lead towards Blackheart. It's so neat to watch how artists structure their panels and pages. Wolverine is swinging his arm, and that's going to bleed down over the next panel that it shows Blackheart's face. Ghost Rider's arm is coming off of the panel. It just looks really cool. And it's good that I'm sure it's been around a while prior to this book, but they're using it to its artistic advantage here. And I really do appreciate it because it takes some of these panels. If everything was inside that panel, it would not have that pop. It would not feel that energetic. It would not feel like it is coming out. There's so much energy that these guys are leaping forward with that it can't be contained in the panel. It's just something, as you're looking at it, you may not even pick up on it, but you feel the energy of the panel and you're wondering why. Well, it's because they're making use of the panel break and doing some great stuff with it. All right. Anything else left unsaid here on the dark design?
I think I may have said it earlier, but just in case, this feels much more like a team-up book rather than just a Ghost Rider book with a couple of guest stars like the first one did. It would have been a cheat for me to use it as my panel, but I do want to point out that I think it is right before the one you picked on the previous page. It's similar to a panel that Adam Kubert does in one of the Spirits of Venom issues where you have a 3-panel grid with Wolverine on one side, Punisher on the other, and Ghost Rider in the middle where their faces are all lined up together. I think that's a really cool gimmick that artists do sometimes. Usually it's just 2 people, like a split down the middle, and you have half of one face on one side and the other is the other face. But when they can squeeze a third person in the middle, that's even better.
Yeah.
And
it's a skull too, and it's a skull like you're ripping the flesh off of both these guys. It looks badass. I agree. Yeah. All right, man. Well, let's get into plugs, dude. What do you got going on over there at Small Screeners?
I do another podcast called Small Screeners with my buddy AJ, where we talk about made-for-TV and direct-to-video movies. When this comes out, we haven't recorded it yet, but I think the plan is to do a movie called The Boneyard for Halloween time. So that'll probably be out around this time this episode drops. And also, actually got a second podcast feed for Because Movies, which is another movie podcast that is less specific to made-for-TV and direct-to-video stuff, where we can talk about whatever we want. That feed is up, Because Movies. It is exclusive to Apple and Spotify because I can't figure out how to get it on any other platforms.
I didn't know that. Okay, I'm going to have to subscribe now.
So far, the only episodes that are up on there are the older episodes that we had already done.
I see it.
Shane Black Christmas and all that stuff. But you're going to be on there soon when we finally get those Netflix episodes. I think we recorded that like a year ago. By the time this comes out, I think we'll have a Horror Hall of Fame episode up, feed, and maybe some other stuff.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Unspoken Issues podcast where we focus on 90s comics. We got a lot of them in the archive. We're at over 100 episodes. I know we're going to be at over 120, but I don't know if that's like in the future or in the past, one or the other. I can't remember. I know I've got a bunch in the can and they're ready to go. I just can't remember what number we are currently on. However, we appreciate you listening. You can also hear the Source Material Comics podcast, the originator of the podcast feed, where we talk about comics of any era. You can hear me and Evan Bevins talk about, right now, I think we're in the middle of doing a run on Booster Gold. So Booster Gold, we're going to be doing the 3rd volume of that here pretty soon. And then me and Evan Bevins talk Marvel Snap, the Marvel mobile card game, Marvel Snap. Me and Evan do a podcast full of misinformation, but a lot of good times where we talk about what's happening in Marvel Snap. We do 4 20-minute podcasts, usually talking about the previous season, the upcoming season. We do a top 5, and we talk about some of the fun we had while we were playing that month. That happens about once a month on this feed, so please feel free to subscribe. So with that being said, over there is Chris Armstrong. I'm Jesse Starcher. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you soon. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us. Unspoken Issues is part of the UnspokenDecade.com, the home for 90s comics, blogs, and podcasts. Unspoken Issues also has a Facebook group you can join if you are interested. Just search the Unspoken Issues podcast and request to join. All of this would not be possible without W2Mnet.com, so make sure to seek them out for more podcasts. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please feel free to share, and we look forward to entertaining you again soon.
the shadows of a twisted town where demons play and souls are bound. Blackheart whispers, follow me. We refuse, won't be deceived. Metal claws, punishment, rage. In this hell we turn the page. No deals with devils, no compromise. Penance, doubt, no more lies. Right, wrong, punishment. In the fire, no revenge. Blackheart will fall, we stand tall. Justice reigns to the call. Per town in darkness, hearts enslaved. Child cries, she must be saved. Blackheart will fall, stand tall. Justice reigns, hear the call. A town in darkness, hearts enslaved. Child cries, she must be saved. Blackheart's promise, a hollow sound. We strike him down, we stand our ground. Riders praise the Punisher's might. In this battle we shine the light. No turning back, we've made our choice. In the end we raise our voice. Right, wrong, punishment. In the fire, no revenge. Blackheart will fall, we stand tall. Justice reigns to the call. Hear the call. The edge is near, but we won't fall. We face the dark, we heed the call. The gray area's just black and white. We stand together, ready to fight. Right, wrong, punishment. In the fire, no revenge. As Blackheart falls, we stand tall. Justice reigns, hear the call.